In this video, we're going to paint some purple flowers, also known as coneflowers, or also Echinacea. And if you've heard of the herbal remedy Echinacea, it's the same thing. It actually comes from these flowers that are native to many parts of North America, including where I live. And these are so plentiful. They are native wildflowers that grow a lot here in the summer. But as I sit down to record this and have a look through my sketchbook, these were done in the middle of the summer, which was a long time ago now, and I really miss them. So I thought it could be fun for us to sit down here together and just sketch these out. This is not exactly a tutorial because that would be implying that I'm at a higher level of skill than I am right now, but let's just call it a bit of a draw along. Grab your sketching supplies or maybe just have a watch here with me. I've got my Leuchtturm 1917 dotted grid notebook here, and I thought we could just start to draw them in a little bit using some fine liner just to loosen up the old hands, get a feel for maybe how I want to shape them and how I want to paint them a bit later on. I like to do this sometimes, just start with a kind of a study using fine liner. And I'm going to do one from a sort of straight on view, which just entails making these doodles, really. I'm not too precious about it. I'm not trying to get a perfect circular shape because if you've ever seen these, they are not perfect by any means. I'm going to dot into the center a little bit and just keep it loose, keep it fun, not overthink anything too much because I am certainly not masterful at sketching or anything like that. But I do like to have fun by practicing a little bit of flowers. I try and draw a flower every single day. But now I haven't seen fresh living outdoor flowers in quite a while, so I have moved on to sketching the vegetables in my house. Has anybody else ever done that? I've done a tomato and also some fruit. I've done a banana that I had found, so that's where I find myself right now. And I thought, why not just crack open the old archives, see what I did in the summer, and see if there's any sort of fun theme or subject I can return to that I really love. And I love the purpley magenta hue of these coneflowers. They never fail to delight me. But right now I'm just getting a kind of a feel for these petals. This is again from the top down. So when you look at one from the side, and you'll see this later, they have a really interesting shape in that what makes this flower different from most other flowers, at least of the ones that I sketch, is that when you paint them or draw them from the side, the petals all point downwards. Well, you'll see what I mean later, as opposed to many other flowers where they might kind of paint up. These have a really distinctive side profile. If you're new here, hi, my name is Helen. This is an art channel where I am a beginner artist, a confident beginner in some respects, but very much new to the art game. And so I'm trying really hard to build this channel. And so if you would give me a hand by subscribing and dropping a like on this video, if you're just enjoying hanging out with me so far, that would mean so much to me. But not only that, it lets me know which kind of videos you guys like and which you might want me to make more of. So I'm just going in here with some lines, and I'm using Micron fine liners. And I feel like people have a love-hate with these, and I certainly do as well, but the ink in them is really good, and they're just reliable. What I don't like, though, is when you try and cap them, I find the cap is picky, and you can't post the cap on the back either. It doesn't really want to stay, but aside from the caps, and there's a little bit more metal on the tip of it than I think I would like, but aside from those two small things, they're just really excellent. And I hate to be picky about them, but I will say the waterproof levels are really excellent. You can put all kinds of watercolor on top of these. It works really well. So finishing up with the sketch, and I'm going to just grab my Pentel brush pen. I think this is the Touch Sign pen. That doesn't have bristles. It has a nylon tip, but the tip bends so that you can get thinner and thicker lines, which I am no expert at, but if you're into like calligraphy and brush lettering, this is a really useful pen, and it's not expensive either. So I'm just writing the word coneflower here. This is a not waterproof ink though, so the issue with this beautiful pen is that if you put water on it, it bleeds all over the place, so it's not suitable for that, but it's nice for finishing up. So back in with my fine liner, just gonna darken up a few spots and just maybe add a little more doodly circles into the center of it. And I'm reasonably satisfied with this. I mean, this is kind of just a doodle to get the hand warmed up. Forgive me if you've heard me tell this story before, but I have been recounting it a few times and I promise I'm going to stop soon. But I only learned how to draw in April, May of the year 2024, so not that long ago. And of course, you can see my skills, are far from perfect, but they've really come along considering there's no way I could have drawn this at all in April. Like I wouldn't have had the first idea of even where to start when it came to drawing. I was like one of those people that could make a stick figure and make maybe the simplest flower you can imagine, and that was it. Like I could not see detail, I could not see value. I was not great at drawing at all. But through practicing every day, I'm getting better, incrementally, slowly, but I can see even how I've improved from a couple months ago, which is fun. So now I'm cracking open my Talens multimedia paper. This is just like the art creation sketchbook, I believe, and it's multimedia paper. And I already penciled these in. Sorry that this is shaking a bit. It has to do with my tripod, but I'll try and keep it as steady as I can. But I'm going to go over it now with this Faber-Castell water-soluble watercolor pencil, because I'm realizing you can't see my little pencil sketch that well, so that's not so helpful. The cool thing about this is if you use the color coral or these like low tint colors, you could probably use a yellow would do well as well. Once you wet them, you can't really see them as outlines. So if you're looking for that kind of look, that's always kind of fun. So once in a while, I'll drag out this pencil and do a nice thick outline. And then by the time you lay a bit of watercolor over it, the water dissolves it and it dissolves into the paint color that you're using, which works especially well if the paint color is darker than this coral color. So I've drawn these, and this is what I was talking about, the side profile with the petals that I'll point downward. Just see what I mean. They're all angled downward from the middle, from the center of the flower, which is unusual compared to most flowers. It makes this really instantly recognizable. So when you see a purple flower like this, or a yellow flower with these petals pointing down in this pattern, it's usually some sort of coneflower or Echinacea species, as far as I know anyway. I'm certainly not a botanist, so don't quote me on that, but every time I see this purpley flower, I can recognize it right away. It's a type of Echinacea. So I'm gonna go in with one of my Cotman watercolor brushes. There are much better brushes out there, but you know what? These are fine so far. One of these days, maybe I'll upgrade to the pro level stuff, but I think brushes make the least amount of difference. And I think it's really the paper and the paints themselves that are super important when it comes to watercolor, less so the actual brushes, but I'm sure opinions vary on this. So I'm going in with Roman Szmal's magenta, my favorite color. And I think that just having seen so many of these purple cone flowers in real life, they are more of this magenta hue, more than a purpley purple, if that makes sense. This is the closest color I have to it, just straight out of the half pan. And so I'm just quickly going in here with my Cotman. I think I'm using maybe a size 4 here. And I'm just dabbing away. Now this multimedia paper is multimedia paper, right? So, I'm using probably a little bit more water than I should on this, but I'm just having fun in my sketchbook. I don't want to be too precious about it. I don't want to calibrate my water ratios that carefully today. I'm just getting some flowers in the old sketchbook, you know what I mean? So as I fill these in, I'm reminded that it's good to just relax. That's the whole purpose for me for doing this. Nothing has to be too perfect. Nothing has to be too precious. I'm not thinking about these colors. I'm just grabbing them and kind of putting them down. And again, I know that this solution's a little watery, and I will probably pay for it later, but it's okay. The cool thing about these sketchbooks though, and I think one of the reasons people love them, is that for the price, right? I can't remember how much this one was. Not that much, over like $10, but for the price, there's so many pages inside. You can keep going and going, and you don't have to be too precious about it, right? You don't have to think like, oh, this is $1 a page or anything like that, because it most certainly isn't. And it just makes you feel free. And so for me, that's the best part of having this Talens sketchbook. Of course, I've had other ones that are higher quality. Strathmore, off the top of my head, is just much thicker. The paper is actual watercolor paper. I've had a Hahnemühle one, which was lovely by all means. I've had some other nice ones, but when I just want to have a little bit of fun and I don't want to think about it too much, these Talens notebooks, I mean, you can't beat them for that headspace. And I just like the colors that they come in as well. I love this blue, and I have a coral one as well that I really enjoy. If you want to see a more in-depth look at all these art supplies, I put out a winter art supply tour, and I don't know if it's out yet when I release this one, but if not, it's around soon. Have a look, navigate around my channel. All the more reason to subscribe. You'll probably more likely to be shown it without even having to look for it if you do that. Dipping in here to, I believe this is Payne's Gray by Szmal. This palette is Frankenstein from a bunch of colors. Some Winsor & Newton Cotmans that I originally came with, and then I started upgrading and adding in Szmal ones that I liked better. Szmal, if you don't know, is a small Polish paint maker, only available at one store in Canada where I live, which is called Wartsman's, which is nearby to where I live. So when I can, I pick up some new Szmal colors. I just love the idea. I've said this before as well, at the risk of repeating myself, of supporting a small paint maker who has a small business. There's just this wonderful romantic factor about buying paints from someone you're imagining has dreamt up all these colors himself, like someone who's a living expert in making watercolor paints, and they're not that expensive either. So what's not to like about that? I will keep repurchasing. Maybe not every color. There have been a few Szmals that I've purchased that I haven't liked, sap green being, I think, the one that I liked the least. But the magenta you saw me using here, so good. So good. So I'm on to the stems, and so I've laid on some sap green, and I'm reminded again why I don't like this that much. So I'm going in with a little bit of indigo now, just to sort of shade the side of the stem, but also just because I don't like that sap green. It's too neon. It's a little brighter than I would like. All right, I think I'm pretty much done with that. So I'm gonna move these away and clear up a little bit of space for myself. And you'll see underneath this Altoids tin of just extra little paints that I like to use, I've got a little pencil drawing here of a coneflower. And one thing I like to do with flowers, one style that I enjoy dabbling in, is just making them very large to the point where they're not all fitting onto the page. I don't know why, this just really appeals to me. So I'm gonna go in with my fine liner and just once again outline, really more for your benefit than anything else, because I could have really painted straight on top of this, but you wouldn't see where I'm laying down the paint. I'm gonna go in there with fine liner. I'm gonna use a thicker one. I started with the 2 and that's too thin, so now I'm gonna go in with this size 08, which I think is the thickest one that I own because I want it to be bold. This is a large flower and I think it can take the bolder fine liner size. So I'm just doodling the top part. And again, these coneflowers have this really distinctive, almost pointy top. And then again, the petals all kind of face downward. So if you're trying to draw one with any kind of degree of realism, not that this is necessarily that realistic, but just take it from me, someone who's seen a million of these in real life, they face down like this. So just bear that in mind as you pencil or sketch yours in. So I've got this in here and I think this is okay, but you know what? I felt that I should add just one more over here on the side, and I'm gonna start to add some lines into them. These petals are a little bit wrinkly in real life and they have quite long lines all through them like this. And so I'm just gonna add a whole bunch of lines. I often do this with flowers. I think it adds to their detail. It makes them feel a bit more wrinkly, textured, and a little bit more alive. And then sometimes I don't add them at all, as you can see on the painting we just did on the other side. I didn't put any lines in, and I'm not gonna put any lines in. I'm just gonna leave it as is. That was almost more to practice like the kind of colors that I would want now for this larger one. When I draw flowers, I ink them very often, and when I do ink them, I use a black fine liner, and when I'm not using a black fine liner, the other go-to pen for me is a Sailor pen, and there's that green one everybody loves. Like the whole urban sketch community is crazy for the 55-degree angle one, but I like the 40-degree angle one better. They cost the same amount of money. I just find the 40-degree one a bit easier to handle. So I'm going to erase the pencil with this kneaded eraser, and what I love about a good kneaded eraser is that it doesn't leave those little like almost skin flakes behind that normal erasers do. So that's the cool thing about kneaded erasers, which I only discovered in like May. I didn't even know such a thing existed. So, you know, it's kind of fun to be discovering these things later in life, really, than you would think. I'm just going to go in and draw a little stem. Sorry that I didn't center this better, but I mean, it's just a stem. It's just going straight down. You're not missing much. And so with this fine liner, I'm just gonna clean up a little bit more, but with this fine liner, I'm just gonna go back and emphasize some parts that I want to be a little darker, like over here. So how's everybody's 2025 going so far? Mine has been pretty good. I'm waiting for the winter blues to catch up with me. They haven't yet, so that's kind of surprising. I've been doing pretty good. All things considered, I usually am just absolutely desperate to get away by this time of year, and I would like to, but it's just not my biggest priority this year. I don't know why. I really don't know why, but I'm not complaining. It's a good thing. Usually I cannot bear the winter by the time January rolls around, which is kind of funny for a Canadian, right? But here's the thing, where I live anyway, Toronto, by the time end of December rolls around, in many places of the world, like that's the end of the winter, you know, later January, they're looking forward to spring. There's like signs that things are lightening up, getting a little less, you know, dark. That's not the case here. February is almost always our bad month. So we have this like extra season that is almost like winter spring, you know, it's not winter. It's definitely not spring. It's just like another phase of winter. So that's usually what I have to look forward to, and normally the idea fills me with dread. It's not so bad this year. I'm going in now with, this is the filbert that I picked up, my Cotman filbert, and some more of this magenta from Szmal, but I think I may add some purple to this instead, actual purple. So when I paint like this, and when I paint these off the sides, as you can see here, obviously this is not all fitting on the page. When I make them oversized like this, another thing I like to do is add almost imaginative color to them. So you'll see what I mean when I say adding imaginative color. Now that this is adequately wet, I'm just going to pick up some more Szmal. I know I keep saying that name. It's spelled Szmal. And so that's pronounced Szmal. I didn't know that until I watched a ton of art tutorial videos about his watercolor paints, but he's got a purple, and so I'm just gonna dab a little in here and here. You know, this is not based on a photo or anything like that. This one came out of my head, so I'm not feeling like I need to follow any reference or anything. I'm kind of just going with, honestly, what my eye wants to see. That really guides a lot of my decisions these days. It's like, what color do I want to see, rather than feeling like I have to be very beholden to a reference image. I'm liking how this is looking so far. I'm going to move on to the center now, and I think I'm going to pick up maybe some burnt sienna. And I know that I haven't really done the centers justice, but I kind of also don't care that much. I'm just having fun, feeling free, and just picking up what I feel like looking at. I know I've done a better job in past watercolors, like doing this center bit, but this is good enough. I'm enjoying it. It doesn't have to be perfectly accurate, right? It can be just like evoking and reminiscent of something that you love. So I'm going in here with, I believe this is a little bit of Payne's Gray. The problem is I have Payne's Gray and Indigo right next to each other here in my palette, and so I can't always remember which is which when I'm picking it up. I'm just quickly grabbing it, and my eye is not always paying that much attention on which one I've put my brush into. If that makes any sense, I don't know. This is quite wet, you know, so of course the downfall, I guess, of this paper is that it is quite wet, so it doesn't absorb water that readily, and therefore it doesn't absorb wet washes that readily. But who cares? I'm still having fun. For all the reasons I mentioned before, I don't think it matters that much. People are maybe a little fussier about this book. Because really what it's got going for it is that great price and that freedom. A lot of people don't like the cream. How do you feel about the cream? I don't mind it at all. I find it more casual, which is a good thing. I don't know, is that a weird thing to say about the color cream? But it feels less crisp, less like my marks have to be perfect, my lines have to be perfect. It just encourages play for me. I appreciate it for that. Now, I wanted to add a bit of an oil painting kind of a vibe. I know that sounds weird, but listen, Roman Szmal's buff titanium. Let me put you on. This stuff is so good. Every time you add it to the background of a flower, it just gives it the something that evokes oil paint to me. It makes it look vintagey without really very much effort. So I'm using my the biggest Winsor & Newton Cotman that I have, which is the size 10 round. And I'm just placing in some buff titanium here, which is this pretty neutral. I don't even know how to describe it. It is the color buff, I guess. So just finishing up here, you'll see me placing this in here, and then I'm gonna set this aside to dry. Just gonna put in a few finishing strokes here, get this background looking pretty. I love how the buff titanium is turning out. That looks nice. I like that. So all of what we did and iterated led us here. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next video.